I am now recording. Welcome to this third panel of 7 at least with some of the world's most influential people in the accounting world. And we are in unusual times. I am thrilled to have 3 guests with us at the moment that represent accounting networks, associations, communities. And these are the kind of people that know what's going on in the accounting world. And we're expecting one more. He may show up, but we play with whoever shows up. And we are not live, but this will be going live on YouTube and out on some social media channels because this is a good time to talk. It is not the time to be silent. It is the time for opinions and insights and perspectives. So we're going to talk about the situation with respect to the accounting world. And I'm just going to invite our 3 guests to introduce themselves very briefly so we know who we have in this virtual room. Declan, can I start with you? Give us a little introduction, sir.
Sure. Good afternoon, everybody. So I'm Declan Swan. I have been the CEO of the UK200 Group for about 4 years. By way of introduction, and I don't want to go into too much detail here because obviously time is of the essence, but you should know we are a membership association of quality assured independent chartered accountancy firms and law firms. And in terms of scale, we represent about 150,000 SMEs across the UK, probably employ about 3,000 professional staff, turnover 250 million, and we have about 500 partners. We also have an international dimension because we are members of IAPA. We are their national accounting group.
Great. Thank you, Declan, and welcome. Liza Robbins, welcome. Just give us a quick introduction, please.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation to the panel. So my name is Liza Robbins and I'm the CEO of Kreston International, which is a top 15 network of accounting firms. We represent about 200 firms in probably somewhere over 100 countries. And I've worked with both networks and associations because I've been doing this type of role for just over 10 years. And prior to that, I actually worked in business and I worked for organizations that were expanding internationally. And I was always responsible for about 20 years, for sort of greenfield sites or outsourcing sites. And it was at that time that I was a client of exactly the sort of firms I now represent. So I sort of see it from 2 sides.
Great. Well, it's lovely to have you with us, Lisa.
Thanks.
And Stephen Hamlet.
Hi, Rob. Thank you for the invitation. I am Stephen Hamlet. I'm the CEO of Bedford International. I graduated with a law degree, qualified as a chartered accountant, and moved promptly into business development roles for accounting firms, similar to Lisa, actually, focusing on international clients. So by that, I mean clients and businesses looking to expand beyond their home territory, working with a number of practices around the world. That gradually and naturally led to me getting involved in the accounting association and network industry. I've now been for about 12 years working as executive director for Europe, Middle East and Africa for an association before becoming the global CEO for another association, and now at the award-winning Bedford International as global CEO. And this week actually marks the first week of my 4th year. Time flies. We cover about 300 offices in over 100 countries. So that's me in a nutshell.
Thank you. I can sense a little bit of competition coming in here, but there's nothing like a global pandemic to level the playing field. And so I want to kick off with this question. And Lisa, I'll come to you first. How well do you think the accounting world is generally coping with what's going on right now? What are you seeing?
I think there's sort of 2 levels to look at because you've got the individual firms and then you've got the profession as a whole. And I think if you look at the individual firms, which we all represent and all probably consult with, it really depends on their characteristics. Firms that are obviously more engaged with technology and were maybe more involved in the cloud could address the immediacy of COVID much faster for themselves. Firms that maybe relied on more of an entertainment or a leisure or hospitality client base will probably be having a tougher time than those involved in the life sciences. But I think something really interesting, and I think we have to sort of ask ourselves, over the last sort of 10 years, there's been a great push from a lot of people to talk to firms and say, really, you need to reduce the reliance on the compliance work and move into advisory because that's where it's all at. Well, of course, which is the most robust now? It's compliance. And I think this is, it doesn't mean the original arguments have gone, but I think that is very, very interesting. And some of the advisory work is under threat. But generally, in terms of the profession, I don't think our profession's ever been more important. I really don't. And I think in many countries, accountants are rightly considered key workers. because they're absolutely indispensable in, you know, I'm very large on purpose and our whole role in society and the economy. I mean, without the role that all our firms are doing, you know, keeping on top of regulation, keeping their clients involved, and accessing funds, you know, our clients and the wider society, I don't think could function. I think in that sense, I think they would cope very well.
Yeah, there's some very good points there. And I've heard accountants described as wearing capes, and they are the frontline health service for business livelihoods, not so much health generally. So, yeah. Stephen, what are you seeing in the way the profession and firms are dealing with what's happening right now?
Well, I agree with obviously with what Lisa said, but turn that around a little bit. Right now, the compliance is the sort of firefighting that accountants are having to do. But there's never a more important moment to become, you know, the advisors to businesses. And that's what I'm seeing a lot of our firms looking more proactively at the future, you know, what's going to happen beyond this. So, you know, accountants are in a fortuitous position that they are needed right now to help advise clients initially with those applications for financial assistance, etc., advice for restructuring. And they're able to do this from home office, due principally because accountants are about the people. The people can work from anywhere, and the technology right now, as has been, is there to help them, and the tools are there, and they're geared up for it. You know, in this international world that we all live in, you know, we've been advising and facilitating cross-border transactions for a number of years, and people are able to do that remotely. So it's remarkable how the accountants have coped with this. You know, especially with a profession that traditionally was, you know, got that reputation of being quite static and fixed, afraid of change, feared for anything different. But when, you know, it just proves to show when you're forced into a situation where you have to change, surprising how firms have adapted. And I've been remarkably impressed by the whole accounting industry.
We are going to talk a little bit later about how this has shown whether accountants are able to change and how good they are at adapting. So we'll cover that. But certainly we're in unusual times. Declan, how have you seen the profession coping generally with this pandemic?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to agree with Stephen and Lisa. I'm delighted the colleagues on the call here are saying the same thing. We're on the same message. I agree completely. Actually, being part of the Keywork team, somebody has to do that job. It's really, really important to jobs, to the economy, and to, of course, the SMEs and the businesses that we represent and we act for. I should say I'm not actually a chartered accountant, which means I'm slightly unusual. I come from a very different background of running businesses. I've done some things well, I've done some things less well. But what I've always appreciated is the fact that to do things well as a business, you need a chartered accountant or somebody with a good knowledge of numbers on your side. And I want to make that point because in these testing times, I think we must not forget the importance of compliance, but equally well, as Stephen has said, advisory is going to be very, very important as well. And you know, I was on a call a couple of days ago with somebody who said, sometimes that could just be listening, giving somebody the opportunity just to speak their mind, share their concerns, probably concerns about their future, and just be that listening ear. And you know, to do so in a non-judgmental way. So I've got huge respect for the people I work with, I have to say. But I think also it's worth saying, just finally on this point, that I can only speak for our members. I think if they are anything to go by, this profession has risen to this challenge spectacularly.
Absolutely.
I have experienced some really big changes in the business world in my career, and I think you all have, many people listening to this will have. And what has struck me most is the fact that within hours of the various announcements, which must have been a blur for most of us, sort of, was it 6, 7, 8 weeks ago, we came out decisively and strategically, and I think colleagues demonstrated amazing leadership. So I'm not necessarily here to cheerlead, I'm just describing my experiences. I think it's been tremendous. And I think the other point to make finally is collaboration. And this call is also an example of good collaboration. So thank you to all of you accountants out there who've been so good.
Yeah, it is good to talk at a time like this, but there's no doubt that the profession and firms as individuals have come under a huge amount of pressure. So the next question is, what challenges have your member firms been facing? And Stephen, I'll come to you first, because under huge pressures, when you find out how well firms are set up and how well led they are.
Yeah, I mean, the most important asset of any accountancy firm is their people. And I think the biggest challenge that firms are having with keeping their people communicated, motivated, working hard, obviously working under different circumstances from home office. And in many circumstances, maybe taking reductions in remuneration, and the firms not knowing that they have any guarantees for payment. So continuing to be able to service, continuing to service your clients, even more than you had before, picking up the phone, being proactive, and being there for your clients and the businesses of your clients when there really is no guarantee at this stage that they might be able to pay you. So that's, twofold, the clients and the people. And people are now feeling insecure, anxious, uncertain, afraid. And these are the people that need to be motivated. So the biggest challenge I would see for firms was, getting their people engaged, assuring them that there is a future, there is a light at the end of the tunnel, even though cash flow right now is suffering. And I suppose the message that short-term pain right now is certainly there for long-term gain, because the relationships that you keep with your clients and you maintain, they're the people who are going to remember in times like this who looks after them. And this is a great opportunity for firms to pick up clients who maybe are not being looked after by other accountants. So keeping those relationships going without certainty of payment is what's going to reap rewards. But that's the biggest challenge, in keeping your staff motivated and engaged.
We will explore the opportunities that this is bringing up. But Declan, let me bounce back to you on this one. Stephen talked about cash flow there and getting paid. The coffers are being depleted, pipelines are being emptied, and firms are being exposed at the moment. What are the challenges that your member firms are facing?
Well, I think I agree again with what Stephen said. Of course, we've got to remember part of our job is to keep businesses in business. And that's a tough job at the moment for obvious reasons. So firms have to keep up with the pace of change. That's obviously very, very important. Those of us at the sharper end of all of this are being hit by announcement pretty much hourly, certainly half daily, if not daily at the least, which means that we have to offer a translation service to our clients to understand the new acronyms, the CJRSs of the world, the SEISS, CBILS. Who would have known these things a month ago, 6 weeks ago? And that's just the thin end of the wedge. The detail, of course, comes with, can you defer, tax payments or whatever it might be. It comes from understanding how you can help your clients decide whether they should take a loan or not, and so on and so forth. And one of the big conversations I'm sure the profession is having is, when clients are faced with the prospect of taking a loan, is that a good idea, or are you simply kicking a can down the road? So this balance of compliance and advisory is really quite exhaustive, I suspect, for many people, and quite overwhelming. So the point is, if that's tough for the profession, how are you going to feel if you're an SME? Because I'm pretty sure most people couldn't rattle off the acronyms I've just rattled off. And I won't pretend I know the details of those either. So the point I'm trying to get at here is, we've got to find a way to protect those businesses. We've got to find a way to work with government and work together to ensure that the tough decisions which need to be made get made, and get made pretty quickly. Yeah. So I think, for me, I agree with, as I say, that the point about staffing, I don't need to build on that. I think it's about protecting our businesses, our client base, and making sure the economy comes through this and our clients come through this as well, stronger and ready to move forward.
Yeah, thank you. Lisa, we've seen accountants in very emotional situations having to make tough commercial decisions. What kind of challenges are coming out for your member firms?
I think, I not agree with everything that's already been said, but the only thing I would sort of just rappel that in, it's clearly just uncertainty. It's for every organisation, every person, is simply uncertainty. So our firms are often advising on short-term measures. How long, in all these government measures, how long are these initiatives going to be in place? What is the longer-term forecast? No one knows. And so they're having to plan, they're having to help their clients who are in an uncertain position, and the firms themselves are in an uncertain position. When is lockdown going to end in certain countries? So I think, unfortunately, all these matters, and of course things will change. What may seem desperately important now, if this uncertainty continues for another 3 months, firms' priorities will change. They also have to survive themselves. So, so I think that's the key thing for me.
And as you hint at, accountants are in the business of risk and risk management and being able to predict what is coming up in the future. And we are in extraordinary uncertainty right now.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we had a crash 10, 12 years ago. Everyone knows about the economic crash of 07, 08. And I'm tempted to ask how accountants are learning in all of this. What lessons would the good accounting firms have learned, possibly from what happened back then and what has already happened right now? Lisa, let's stay with you on that one.
I mean, I think, again, you know, we're talking about accountants, but I talk about this for, again, a lot of organizations. I think a lot of the lessons are not just for accountants, but I think all businesses ever increasingly have to have what if learning. To take that time. I think so many of our firms and probably their clients are so busy running the business that they never ever stick their head up and have the time to think, what if this happened? What if there was a meltdown of the stock exchange? What if I could never get on a plane? You know, what if there was a hyperinflation? And I think all of our firms do need to be engaging in more what if, because I know everyone will say, well, you know, I don't have time for that because I'm trying to run a business and it's all so unlikely. But of course, what we can see in the last 10 years, things aren't unlikely. They happen.
But you couldn't mitigate for a what if there's a global pandemic, Lisa, could you?
No, but I think you could mitigate for certain aspects. So, for example, what if you couldn't get into work? That could be an earthquake in some countries. That could be, I mean, I had a classic in a business I was running where we were outsourcing into India. This was about 15 years ago. A major Bollywood star died and there was riots on the streets. I mean, you know, it wasn't a pandemic. It was a very immediate incident, but it caused us great issues. So that we learned our what if. You break it down into component parts, don't you? And say, what if this happened? How would you handle it? Whatever causes it could be a different matter.
Yeah. Accounting, Stephen, has been run in a very similar way for the last few hundred years, but we are in times where we need to adapt and change. So what lessons will the good firms that you see have learned from this?
I think confidence is a big thing because, you know, confidently firms have been able to step up to the mark. They have been able to change. A lot of traditional firms always feared change. So I think seeing that they were put into this position where many from, you know, heard, you know, the night before that the next day they were not able to go into the office. But did they collapse? Did they break down? No, they were already geared up for that working remotely. They were already equipped to deal with this situation, although they hadn't envisaged a pandemic like this. I think, you know, continuing to think outside the box, you know, accountants firms should learn that they are adaptable. They can think beyond the reputation of the traditional accountant, outside their comfort zone of normal working practices. Technology has certainly made that possible. I think, as Lisa said, you know, even more accountants should now learn from this that they really do need to continue to look at that technology and what's required for them working under conditions like this, ensuring data is protected from cyber attacks, for example. You know, unfortunately, these situations, there are people out there who take advantage of vulnerable situations like this. And you hear about a lot of attacks going on right now because people are thinking and firefighting other situations. So accountants being there to advise on levels like that.
Yeah.
And just going beyond, you know, the normal accounting definition to more of that consultancy role.
Declan, you said earlier that accounting firms have generally dealt well with this, but what have you seen on an accounting firm's ability to deal with change and learn from what's happening?
I mean, I think, again, building on what's been said and not repeating the good points colleagues have made, I think we've learned something around the importance of keeping in touch with our clients. You know, I worked in the hospitality industry in my background, and I was trained or taught that you can never communicate enough in a crisis. And that is true to an extent, but I think the key is to communicate effectively. So in the initial stages of this crisis, you may recall that we had the bulletins and edicts from government coming down thick and fast, which was fine. And we obviously all communicated those. But as the crisis unfolded, we began to become very choosy about what we shared, because the danger is that you end up confusing people. So there was something about keeping in touch with clients, being visible with the clients, making sure that they knew that we were there for them. And to do that, it was important to be discerning in the communications which were issued, I think. And that might be dressed up as advisory. I think it's probably more to do with caring about your client base and making sure whatever you tell them is based upon reality. One of the things we learned very quickly was don't take third-party information. I mean, the old thing of don't believe everything you hear in the press, because quite often what happens is, of course, policies are being announced, but they're being trailed. And then for an SME, you've got to work out, is what I'm looking at right, real? And that could have an effect on your financial well-being. So for us, and I think for many of the profession, it was about making sure we communicate the right thing at the right time to the clients.
Yeah, you bring up an excellent point, and let's camp on that for a moment. The clients that accounting firms serve have generally been served well, but we have heard of stories, maybe some of your member firms, if you're honest, that have hunkered down and perhaps not been as proactive as they could do. Lisa, let me come to you. What has this pandemic taught us about the way firms have been or should have been putting clients first?
Yes, I think clearly they should be putting clients first. And it was quite interesting. Earlier this year, I wrote a piece. I'm sure everyone writes in the beginning of the year. And my piece was not about what we achieved last year. It was about looking forward.
Right.
And so I'm answering your question in a much wider way, actually. And I was talking to our firms and saying that ever increasingly, it's about our whole purpose in society. Years ago, people were doing mission statements and values and vision, but the world's moved on. And this is really now about purpose. And I actually wrote, if anyone was interested, it's on the Crescent.com website, a whole series of emails. And I started off by saying to them that, we are stereotyped as quite boring bean counters, but the work we do is of immense value. And I actually wrote, and I sort of rue the day, I said, without, good financial systems, societies can't function smoothly. And I said, it's hard to see how essential that confidence is until things go wrong. And they were the words I wrote in January. And so I wrote a new piece just recently saying, I think it's fair to say things have gone wrong. But
almost prophetic there you were.
I know. I think they've asked me to stop writing now. So, but anyway, I've continued. It's still on our website, my new thinkings of what was said. And I can see that those firms who do have more purpose, for example, have naturally put clients first. They haven't really thought about it. It's just there. And I also see them doing beyond that. And I think this is quite interesting, is that I've seen, for an example, the Sri Lankan firm has had a big drive across their firm to get blood donations from their staff, because although operations are low, blood donations are extremely low across the world. The uptake through their staff. We've got a firm, one of our firms in the UK is dealing with some very high net worth clients who were able to divert factories in China to make PPE, and they were helping with the shipment of it. There's a whole bunch of partners down in Reading this weekend at a homeless shelter and they're giving out the food, So I know you may say, well, you're not really talking about clients, but they're part of the whole ecosystem. They're part of the whole society. And I think in that sense, and I think, and what's happening with their staff, even staff that have been furloughed have said, well, I've never been so proud to work for a Kreston firm. And that the clients are going to feel that. So if they're treating society like that, they will treat the clients like that. So I know I've given you a wide answer more than a narrow one, but I just wanted to bring in some different thinking on that as well, because there's passion, as you can probably tell.
That's great. We like a bit of passion.
Society.
It is a great opportunity for CSR and engaging with the community.
Absolutely.
And Stephen, with the firms that you've seen, they are standing in the gap, aren't they, between, say, the deluge of information that Declan was talking about and interpreting that for clients. They've got to get that stuff out. They've got to separate the wheat from the chaff in terms of what is good information. What have you seen in the way clients are or should have, firms are or should have been putting clients first?
I've been mightily impressed, to be honest. I've had a number of conversations with our firms all over the world. We've had regional conferences and virtual meetings in sub-regional groups. And just looking, I'll give you a specific example, Latin America. I mean, Latin America is a region that's been struggling for a number of reasons, or before this, for a number of different situations, and has been suffering a lot. So if any region was going to be hit by something else very hard, it was obviously going to be Latin America. But what I've seen from our firms out there is a miraculous amount of passion, resilience, putting on free webinars to clients, uploading them there so that clients could freely download at their convenience, offering a lot of free information to their clients. and going, the extra mile. And again, a region that probably more than any is not sure that their clients are going to be able to pay them. So they're doing a lot of work at the moment with no guarantee for payment, and going the extra mile and doing even more than they normally do, and putting a lot of things out there in the public domain for clients. One firm, again, in Latin America said that they're on a one-by-one basis, picking up the phone and contacting clients and speaking to them about their needs. I mean, several of our firms are multidisciplinary, or at least work with other professions, so they can offer accounting, legal, labor, financial consulting, all sorts of advice. And the clients have just been highly appreciative of this, looking at things that the clients may not have thought of because they're panicking too much. So being there, as you say, the middle person between what's out there as aid, and helping the businesses make sure that they survive and then continue to go further.
Yeah, but presumably being paid at the same time, because you can't do pro bono work indefinitely, can you?
No, I mean, we hope that when cash flows, improve, that obviously the rewards will be there in the future, and they'll start to get payments in.
Yeah. Declan, you brought up the client aspect of this. Anything to add to what's been said?
Well, I suppose the thing I would say is, what clients probably require is practical support. I mean, there's an awful lot of speculation going on, and that's understandable, of course. And for those of us who have to analyse things, of course, that goes with the territory. But I think it's probably fair to say we certainly are focused on trying to produce practical support that SMEs can lock and load, for want of a better expression, or plug and play. And that isn't just about translation. That's also about just general support.
Yeah,
we have your backs, we're on your side, which of course we all are, because we are all concerned with keeping business moving. So I think that's what I would add.
But it's not just practical support, is it? Because you'll appreciate accountants are now being asked to be psychiatrists, mental therapists, confidants, mentors, and everything else. Let me just put it out there. Anything to add to that in terms of how accountants have had to step up beyond, say, a professional role? Any thoughts?
Well, that's very much the point about listening, I think, which I sort of abbreviated earlier on. And I think it is about lending that listening ear. And you're right, people do want to talk, and they need somebody who not only can listen but can also coach. And so we start getting into the realms of helping people find solutions for themselves with a bit of help. And that's something that accountants are very good at, but not everybody realizes that unless you work with a really good accountant.
Well, that's the realm, Liza, isn't it, of the trusted advisor. You've got to be almost everything.
But it's interesting, isn't it? Because, I mean, I'm digging deep here to find some positive out of COVID. But anyway, give me I mean, if you look at the pressures on an accountant in the last 10 years, some of the publicity has just not been very favourable for our profession. Which I think some of it is absolutely true, but that wasn't the whole accounting profession, but there've been corporate collapse. There's been a lot of questions about what we do. But now I think, clients, I think someone mentioned goodwill earlier. There will be goodwill now towards accountants. They're not perfect, and of course we need to improve. But they are now this lifeline, and they are putting the clients first, because guess what? Most of them actually care. It's as simple as that. You can have as many business strategies as you want, but if you've got people who care, and the reason they care about their clients is because I think all the firms we represent on the call, they're business owners themselves, right? This is not someone on high talking down to some small business owner. They are business owners. They care. They have families, and it's going to hurt them as much as their clients.
Yeah.
And where I think. So I've dug very, very deep to find you a positive out of all this.
Well, there will be some positives, and we'll come to those. But
yeah, maybe people will see accountants as very important and human. I think that's the other thing. They're human, and they're coming across as human.
It's a great point. But Stephen, just to finish on that, some firms have been exposed, haven't they? They've not served their clients particularly well, and obviously not your member firms, but there will be opportunities for firms going forward to take over those clients that have not been served well.
Oh no, absolutely. We've had a number of calls where our firms have not only clients but starting to pick up people. So people that have been laid off from other accountancy firms that have not been looking after those people or have not been able to survive. It's a good opportunity to get valuable staff at a good rate right now, as well as picking up the clients that are not being looked after. And again, this isn't a sale for networks or associations, or maybe it is, but we're all here, the three of us, promoting that. And I think there's never been a better time to promote that togetherness. And the accountancy firms that are part of a group, that they can pick up the phone, they can have these webinars like this and discuss challenges and opportunities. they're the ones that are surviving, and they're the ones that are going to look at the opportunities out there and pick up the clients that are not being serviced and looked after, not being given that personal human touch that Lisa was just mentioning, and also the people from those firms. So it's a great opportunity.
Yeah. Let's talk about leadership for a moment. You're in leadership positions, all of you, very influential global positions. You're having conversations all the time with leaders of these accounting firms. So has this pandemic changed the way accounting firms are led? And have you got any examples of standout leadership? Declan, let's come to you first on this one.
Yes, I do have standout examples of individuals who have come through, and I'm sure everybody on the call will as well. So I probably shouldn't mention them by name if you don't mind, because otherwise we could be here.
You can be as generic as you like, but
well, I'm guessing Lisa, I'm sure, has a list probably on her desk right now, and I wouldn't blame her. I'm the same, and so Stephen. So let's talk about this in more general terms. What we've found, and Stephen's just touched upon it, and I think all three of us have kind of been talking about the issue as well. The thing about leaders is, of course, good leaders collaborate in the modern times. They don't try to find the answer and then just foist that upon somebody else. They work in communities and they try to work in that kind of consultative style. Now, the reason I mention that is because that's what the groups we are concerned with are all about. So I may not know the answer, but Lisa may know the answer, or Stephen. So therefore we can collaborate and we can find those answers. That isn't just a nice thing to do. That promotes efficiency, it promotes productivity, it promotes business success. So for us, what we've found is that the real leadership here is coming through collaboration. To give you some examples, we run usually annual managing partner forums. So every 12 years, or every 12 months, I should say, for the past X number of years, way before my time, we've had that taking place. Now we're running these every single week. And the participation is phenomenal. And because we've got Teams and we've got Zoom, we can share documents online, which means we can have documents approved very, very quickly to be cascaded to whoever we need to send those to, principally our client groups. So what we found is that by working together, we've been stronger. And I'm sure the other groups will have found that too. And so in some respects, one of the magic things about this situation is we can all talk to each other in a very open way. Mm-hmm. We're not competing right now, we're collaborating. And that's certainly why I came on the call, because I wanted to be with colleagues demonstrating that collaboration, just as members of the organizations are doing and taking things forward. So that for me is what it's all about. I think the other point to make is we've noticed that our leaders have been very decisive and very strategic. And I think that's a tribute to everybody as well. So, again, Lisa, some more positives to put into the pot, perhaps.
Yeah. But Lisa, Declan brings up an interesting point. Good leaders are tactical and strategic. We're seeing a lot of tactical leadership, but the strategic leadership is a level on, isn't it? What have you seen in terms of leadership from firms?
Well, I must say, I just really like the point Declan made, because I think for all of us, we may work for one network or consult with a few firms, but we all represent the accounting profession.
Yeah.
And we have an absolutely vital role to do that. And it's important for me that whether it's Declan's firms or Stephen's firms, that they do well and they do the right thing. That only makes me happy. So I really like that collaboration point.
And in another time, you may have been more adversarial in your approach because you're all membership organisations of sorts, but there are more conversations now. We are more willing to get together and discuss things, aren't we?
Do you know, I think in honesty, behind the scenes, we always have been. Some of the people, on this call, we've always been quite friendly. And I think it's interesting because I have come from other professions where it's far more sort of adversarial but between firms. But I think we've all taken quite a sensible approach that just because another organisation does something well, it doesn't hurt me. Yeah. I mean, as long as they'll talk to me about it, I'm delighted. So, but in talking about leadership in another way, I maybe just tell you a point about the leadership I've really enjoyed seeing. So I think all of us will know there are leaders out there who are good leaders, whether it's good times or bad times, and visible, and they communicate. And as Declan says, they're on point though, But the leaders I've really enjoyed seeing, and I'm sure we all have a few of them, are those people who are not natural leaders. Okay, they're maybe inward people. They could be a bit awkward socially. And I have seen some outstanding examples of these sorts of people now having contact with their employees every single day, and their words are not filtered by marketing, And it shows in a great way, because it gets back to the fact they're not suited and booted. They might be sitting at their kitchen table with a dog barking in the background. Guess what? They're human. And those people I've seen grow, because they've suddenly realized, okay, I may not be the best professional spokesperson, but people are listening to me, and people now know I care. And that's the leadership I've enjoyed.
Yeah. It's an excellent point. And the word that smacks to me in that, Liza, is authenticity.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Stephen, what have you seen in terms of leadership from your member firms that stood out?
I mean, it's a great point that Lisa just made, and taking that even further. I think, we've spoken a lot about putting clients first, but if anything, I would take a step back and say, put your people first, and then you can look after your clients, because if you don't look after your people, you've got no one to look after your clients. And the leaders that to me have shined are the ones that really talk about the value they put on their people. I mean, we had a call recently and someone said, that they're aware of their employees, the ones that live alone, and they're calling them regularly just to make sure they're okay. Because those are people who probably spend 5 days a week in the office. That may be the majority of their communication. That their life has now been turned upside down. They're now in a house on their own, probably not speaking to a lot of people. So to make sure that there's regular communication with those and the rest of the teams is really important. So the leaders for me that have shined and stood out are the ones that talk about their people and are willing to say, we're not going to draw from the partnership for the next few months, to make sure that we retain the good people. We could furlough them, we could lay them off, but we're really going to minimize that until we desperately have to, because we really want to keep our people motivated and realize that we're with them during this tough period of time, and not just the clients, and not just thinking about profits and business, because the people are really important. So they're the ones really that are shining out for me, showing their passion, as Lisa was saying and Declan was saying, and that they care. And that's important.
And the three of you are bullish about what's happening in your member firms, but isn't this also a time when leaders show a little bit of vulnerability? They admit that they're struggling with certain areas, and they perhaps might not do before, because that might be a sign of weakness, say one managing partner talking to another. But now people are being more authentic and saying, well, yeah, we have got this. We have fellow people. I am struggling with this. I don't know how to cope with this. And you'd never see that before.
We're all in it together, Rob.
Yeah, it's a great way of putting it.
And I'm sure everyone on this call has had business meetings. I mean, I've had a classic one, someone I've never met before. If I'd gone, we would have all been in a suit. We would have had our armour on.
Yes.
It's not on. And guess what we spoke about for 5 minutes was telling me that, the butcher just had a delivery, so he had to go down. And so the next conversation, I said, how's your freezer going?
Yeah.
And this has advanced our business relationship because we're people.
So it's funny, I was saying to someone the other day, it's funny how we're seeing more people now than we did before. No one wants to call you on a phone call anymore. They want a video conference. Yeah. So you have to put on some clothes and look some halfway respectable, because everyone wants to see you on film. Before they just pick up the phone and speak to you, but now it's let's do it by Teams, let's do it by Zoom. So if anything, virtually, we're seeing more people than we did before.
You do wonder, though, don't you, if this had happened 10 years ago and we hadn't had the technology to do stuff like this, how we would have coped without the internet and everything else. That would be scary.
Yeah.
Let's talk about some kind of new normal. Will we see a new kind of accounting firm? Will there be different business models, different structures? Has this exposed anything where firms need to be a little bit more robust? Stephen, let's stay with you on that one.
I mean, it's very easy to answer that question and say, yes, of course, the whole world is changing. Everything's going to be different. Nothing's going to ever be the same. But I would not necessarily look at it like that. I would say that simply this expedites the transitional process that was already happening. Firms were already thinking about flexible working patterns. The younger generations were already talking about and demanding to work from home. The older generations were just starting to accept it. And this will now kick it in a little bit sooner than it would have done before. I think there will now be more of a discussion about the value of work. I think, productive periods of time are now shorter because we're working from home. We're not kind of traveling. So that kind of changes the whole billable timesheets. And that
2-hour commute's gone as well, hasn't it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So the whole commute thing. So that's a whole discussion on value pricing against billable timesheets. But firms were starting to go down that path anyway. So I wouldn't necessarily say that this creates a new kind of accounting firm that was never envisaged before. I just think, and in a different direction than one that was envisaged before. I think it's simply that's forcing the path to come sooner. It's forcing people to do and make those changes a little bit quicker than they were before. But accountants, you know, we were talking years ago about the accountant turning away from the traditional, you know, bookkeeper to the trusted advisor. That somewhat new trusted advisor term actually is being spoken about for the last few years. But now it's becoming at the forefront of necessity. This is the way accountants must go. They must be forced into this sooner than later because of this. So it's just pushed things forward, in my opinion.
What's come out from other panels that we've done with your peers is the way this has accelerated what was already in the pipeline. Right, we're going to get this done now, and instead of something taking 6 months, to turn it around in a couple of days. So it almost has forced change. Declan, what have you seen about any potential new structures or business models in accounting firms?
Well, I think just to echo somewhat what's just been said, you know, somebody once said you can, with the right motivation, you can sort of change things far quicker in 4 weeks than you can in 4 years. And I've been doing my job for well over 4 years, and I've seen more change in the last sort of 4 weeks than in all that time. And that's not because we're not moving quickly. It's not because we're not dynamic. It's because we have, I think, begun to find the new normal. So in actual fact, you know, I don't think we should delude ourselves and think we've got to wait until we're told about the new normal, because there won't be a starting gun. I think that's already begun to happen. I think the conversation we're having reflects that. So we are seeing new structures. People are, on the staffing side, already finding ways to make it normal to work from home. We probably won't reverse that entirely. And by way of example, I come across firms who are investing in almost duplicate technology. So the kit at home is the same at work. So there will be an assumption that there will be a need to go back to the office, and they may well do that, but they will also be able to rotate teams, that sort of thing. But equally well, in terms of clients, we are seeing an interesting emphasis on chartered accountants advising their firms on how they might repurpose some of what they do. So for example, a firm in the north of England gave us case studies on our website, which is all about a hotel, which is now no longer doing what it was doing, which is obviously being a hotel. It's now serving food for charities, key workers, and so on and so forth. Now, this is not completely unusual because it's in the press in relation to food businesses all the time, but that's already becoming a normal thing. So as a consequence, we are seeing new structures, we are seeing new ways of operation. But like I say, I don't think we should wait until the new normal arrives. I think we should embrace what we're doing right now and do more of it. And so we will see more changes of that sort. And I think that's probably where we stand at the moment. But I think that's quite positive, if I may say so, because as Steve says, you know, we wanted to digitalize our industry, we wanted to do new things, and now here's a great opportunity to do it.
Yeah,
just keep them.
We're seeing a lot of industries pivot, and the accounting profession is not far behind. Are you seeing much change coming up? And one example I'm thinking of, Lisa, that's come up before is we've got all this office space. It's costing us a ton per square foot. Can we change right here what we're doing and the way we run our firm? What are you seeing?
We can. I mean, the answer is we can change. But I think so much of this will just depend on the economy that people are working in and that their clients are working in. Economies, and of course we're globally connected, but those economies that have the Boris bounce and surge, if you want to read some newspapers, you know, some of those firms will scuttle back to their comfort zone, which is normal. Okay? And that's what they'll do. Other firms, and part of that could be if we have a 35% reduction of GDP and they're forced to do it, and I agree they shouldn't have actually been forced to do it, but they may start taking wider lessons. And you mentioned things like office space. I mean, why do we need this office space? Why do we need all these meeting rooms? And there was a little bit of that happening anyway, but I do think there's a very big difference. If you were to start a firm today, an accounting firm today, it would have a very different model. If you have an existing firm,
a very good point.
Change, you know, not saying you can't change, but it's much, much harder to change. And so, and I hear things, and I think some things will be really interesting, because I hear people saying about the office space and working from home, and this is all the new normal. I don't know if you remember, you all look far too young, but when hot desking came in, and you know, this was all revolutionary. Oh, you know, we were the new kids on the block. And guess what? there were some people in the office who then came the new revolutionaries, because they said, I want my own chair. and so you will have a lot of people are saying, and I think we see it through our own eyes, I mean, I can work from home, I'm all right, Jack, but lots of people can't, and they don't, and that hasn't been the culture of the firm, and they're big things to change, very big things to change. So I think it depends on the economy, it depends on the state of the firm, but can they change? Of course they can, of course. And it is a shame that the crisis shows you can change. That is a shame.
Yeah, interesting times. Just a couple more questions. I want to talk for a moment about technology, and let's stay with you on this, Lisa. What new skills or technology will accountants need to invest in after this as we go into a new way of working?
Well, I think it would just be top of mind. Absolutely top of mind. And I think even those firms that embrace technology, I think even most of them would say if they'd known this was coming, they would have done a few more things as well. Or their inventory was in place, So I think all firms will have that top of mind to look at technology, whether they go back to the office or not. But I mean, you mentioned things like saving time of travel. Well, that's not just travel to work. That could be travel to audits, for example. I know some of the very large networks are investing significant amounts of money looking at remote audits. I mean, people were speaking about drones and things, weren't they? It's not so sci-fi anymore.
No.
So, but I think there's different technologies. There's a technology that is fundamental to your business, like people mentioned Teams and Zoom and having laptops, and and then there are technologies to service your clients, and I think firms will have this top of mind.
Yeah, Declan, we see, haven't we, that the firms that have coped and adapted the quickest are the ones that are already in the cloud. They're already invested a lot in technology. What new skills or technology do you think firms will be investing in after this?
Well, I think online for sure. I mean, I don't know about other people on the call, but certainly 6 to 8 weeks ago, we were worried if we could get a meeting to last 10 minutes, getting a signal which was stable. I mean, I'm impressed we've been on here for nearly an hour, and actually it's still quite stable and it all looks good. So there's a whole issue about that. But I think there's also softer skills which we need to think about as well. I mean, one of the points which has occurred to us over the last few weeks is that, and obviously you are on the chair today, Rob, but whether you're chairing a meeting or indeed whether you are on the meeting as a participant, there are a whole new set of protocols to think about. It's not quite the same skill set. And one of the points I've noticed with some of the individuals have shown, and I loved Lisa's point earlier on about some of the people you wouldn't imagine are natural leaders. Yeah. We've noticed people who would not necessarily have wanted to chair a face-to-face meeting have absolutely taken to Zoom meetings like ducks to water. I can't explain that exactly, but what it does tell me is that, yes, we'll need tech, but we'll also need to adapt our behavior as human beings. We'll have to find ways to demonstrate or develop those softer skills, if I can use that expression, so we can communicate. Because obviously in these meetings, it's not just about talking, it's also about listening and then being able to engage in a meaningful way. That's new territory, especially when you adapt that into the client accountant relationship, or even in the manager-staff relationship.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Stephen, thoughts on technology from you?
Yeah, very good point that Declan made there, because even myself, who's very used to running a number of discussion-based sessions with members face-to-face, I had to have a Zoom meeting with 70 people the other day. And you've got to sort of get used to the logistics of muting people at the right time, who's raising their hand, how, it's a different set of skills, but obviously you adapt and you get used to it. But again, going back to what I've said right from the start really of this meeting, accountants were geared up for this. We've been talking about AI and digitalization for the last few years, about putting things into the cloud, about paperless offices. As Lisa said, it just makes accountants think, well, we have coped, but we could have coped a little bit better. So let's invest a little bit more. Let's make sure we are completely geared up for remote access to files, to technology, to communicative devices that we need. So yes, accountants will certainly be investing and continue to invest in that, and quicker than they would have done had this not happened.
Sure. We're coming to the last question now, so I'm going to ask you for your closing comments, and let's just look ahead to what comes next for the remainder of 2020 for accountants and the firms that they represent, and even for networks and associations like yourself. So, Declan, let's come to you first on this. Closing thoughts about what's coming up and what the new normal looks like.
Well, I think we've done well to begin by embracing the change that we've embraced already. So I think we're beginning to find our new normal, which I think is a good thing. I think it's more of the same. And I just in summary, look after the people, make sure that your people are being protected at all times, and that could mean thinking about PPE. In some cases, it could mean all kinds of things. Are they safe in the offices? Are they safe at home, and so on and so forth. And of course, personal well-being is essential to that as well. Looking after clients, of course, is very, very important. Finding new ways to look after their needs is important. But I think really it's about not seeing this as obviously crises are negatives, but try to find the positives in all of this and try to use it to advance the business model we want to see, but also, dare I say, the profession we want to see. And going back to where we started, I think we need to make sure we show ourselves in the best light to clients and the community and government, if I may say so, just to reconfirm the importance of what our members do and the profession does generally and its contribution towards society. So those would be my thoughts. And of course, collaboration is going to underpin all of that.
Yeah, you've reinforced that a lot, which is a very good point. Stephen, have we got a reset or a reboot? And a reboot is where you turn it off and on again and everything goes back to how it was. A reset is something different. So what's coming up for 2020 when you look at the landscape?
I think it's obviously a reset, but I would not like things to, I do not see things changing dramatically as much as maybe some people are saying that they will. I mean, I've spent the last 15, 20 years, I'm sure we all have, saying how important face-to-face meetings are. You can't do it over a webinar. It's not the same. You need those networking breaks where all the business and the relationships are built at the social aspects of our conferences. And I still strongly believe that. I think at the same time, we will start to have more conferences and meetings over webinars because we realize it does work. We have coped, but I still don't think it works as effectively as those face-to-face meetings. So for the rest of 2020, I cannot say we will have another physical meeting at Russell Bedford. We may towards the end of the year, but we're certainly not going to stop having physical meetings. We may just supplement those with more virtual meetings. From accountancy firm's point of view, the rest of 2020, we'll probably start to see the end of the kind of firefighting, them more now going to clients and saying, you know, what does your model look like? Now we're coming to the end of this. Let's give you more advice. Let's restructure. Let's see what we can do, what extra consultancy we can provide. So the accountants will now start towards the end of this year and into next year, moving even more into that trusted advisory role. Yeah.
Well, Lisa, well, that's the last word for you. You've been very positive and buoyant throughout it all, as have all of our guests here today. So what do you see coming up for the accounting profession over the next few months?
I think, we talk about this new normal. I hear it all the time. I think normals. I don't think there's one new normal. I think there's a timeline on that. I think the new normal in the next month might be different to the new normal in 3 months. I think there'll be some things we're still doing from this moment in time in 3 years' time, and other things we won't. So my message is stay agile. All the networks, all the associations, all the, don't think you know. Don't, I know that sounds terrible because we're advisors, but just stay agile. And don't suddenly start building whole new businesses about what you know now. Because I suspect if you had this conversation in another 6 months, we'd say, oh, Rob, I said that, but actually what I've now seen is this. So I think that's very important. But, and I think it will depend, again, I sort of said it before, but it does depend on the economy and what happens there. And it depends in which country you're in. So, and slowly that will all come together. But I really, again, just focus firms and everybody to make sure you understand your purpose. And I think at the moment, we should be very, very proud of the profession that we represent.
Yeah, and that's a lovely comment to finish on. You all represent your associations and networks with dignity, with authenticity, with true influence and strong leadership. And that's really required right now because the firms that you represent need strong leadership. They need guidance, they need insights, they need perspectives. And you stand in a unique position, all of you. So thank you so much for your positivity today, for your insights and your perspectives. It's been great getting you all talking. And we will look forward to the next panel. If we have another one, would you come on as a guest with a few different peers just to share some different questions and perspectives?
Absolutely.
Well,
absolutely. Very enjoyable. Thank you, Rob.
It has. It's been great to get you all talking. We've really enjoyed your insights. I'm going to stop recording now so you can say a wave. And thank you so much for joining us today. We've finished within the hour.